Morning, everybody. We've been talking a bit about estuary fishing. Really, it's my favourite form of fishing. I just love the environment. I love the fact that you're always in with the chance at a real whopper of a fish, right? Um, I like the diversity of it. You've got to think about your fishing. Um, you've got to hunt the fish, right? I love the fact that you can see them, right? If you've got a good pair of glasses. I've said before, the Oakley Holbrooks. I mean, honest to God, for 170 odd euro, they leave the Costas in the dust. I mean, they just are extraordinary. I have the blue lens pair, and they're a reasonably nice looking pair of glasses. So, I'm going to take you, just show you some of the stuff from the biggest to the smallest that I'm throwing in the estuary, right? Now, this is a Spanish company and one to watch out for, right? They make fantastic lures. This is the Espita, whatever. So what's the name of that? It's called a soft shad, right? It's got a beautiful profile. It's flat on the sides, and it comes down into this very tiny tail, right? But it's got quite a thump to it, right? You can fish it in a number of ways. You can fish it on a jig head, a batchy head, say 7 gram, and tip it along the bottom. You can fish it weedless with no weight, or weedless with a weight, right? It comes in lovely colors. It also comes in a forktail version that I really like. I haven't got here to hand, but I also fish, right? Um, so that's kind of the biggest stuff I'm throwing until you get to like October, November, when the big launch and stuff are around the moon are heading into the estuaries. September, the sand eel will spawn. We start to throw some bigger stuff. You'll have heard me talk about these lures before, and you'll hear me talk about them again. To my mind, right, the very first soft plastic I used, and I'm still using today, you will not get a better lure than that. That's the Giant X layer, right? You get the 4.5 inch fella as well, right? And it really does make a difference. Tom, known as Spitfire, I think, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. I fished with him one morning, maybe 20 years ago, and he was the only chap who had the big version, and he had 3 fish, either over or in and around 10 pounds. I mean, I had multiple fish, but all smaller, right? So the big fish were absolutely focused on the lance, and that was the size of lure they needed, right? So fish can become very focused on size. But in an estuary, you also have, in normal times, you have fish that are just floating around, scoping about, right, sitting in the weed, sitting in incredibly shallow water. So there we go, right? That's 4 inches. It's from depths, right? And it's called the Sac Atsas Shad. I'm going to put it up there. You'll be able to, right? Now, I like, this is Gold Shiner. Gold Shiner is a color I really like for bright days. Why? Because the sun glints on the gold and it makes the lure shine a little bit and it'll catch their attention. So obviously I'm fishing a very small offset hook with a bit of lead so that it's castable. I'll be fishing that on my light kit, which at the minute is a favorite, up to 24 gram. I think it's 8'6" or 8'7", right? Absolutely beautiful rod, by the way. I'll be doing a YouTube video on those rods. I mean, they're just super duper. Uh, we can then go down to something as small as this. Again, the very same idea as the depths, small little hook, throwing it into the weeds, letting it sit, fishing incredibly slow, right? Or sight fishing. If you see a fish, you're going to throw that in front of them and give it a little twitch. Very much like fly fishing, as much as lure fishing, right? So light, light, light. And the other thing is the quality of your fluorocarbon and the poundage of your fluorocarbon, right? For some reason, it's become kind of common practice with bass anglers to use 20-pound fluorocarbon. Well, I've never caught a 20-pound bass. Have you? Yeah. So I don't use 20-pound fluorocarbon. Here's a little from the same company. Sorry, let me show you that company so that you can go and. Now those I got in Southside Angling in Dublin. Again, thanks to them for their support. I mean, in Aladdin's Cave, you get lost in that shop. I mean, honest to God, Dave is an incredibly nice guy, and Frank and Des and all the chaps up there, Albie, all incredibly helpful and avid fishermen. And then Craig, of course, is their internet guy. All know their stuff, really, really do. This is from the same company. It's a little guy I've gotten off Charles today to give a little fish. You can see it's ribbed, right? So it's going to make a little bit of fuss in the water. It's probably going to catch their attention. I think that is really going to do the business, right? And it's on a 4.0 owner twist lock, and it will give me a bit of castability. Again, I'm fishing. I think I have a 2,500 size loaded with 16-pound braid, and I'll be using a 14-pound or a 12-pound leader. Nothing heavier. Right. Here's the depths in another color. Now, don't get me wrong, I am also currently have an order in. I want these in the bigger size, right, for later in the year. But I mean, just look at that. I mean, you know, you put that on top of a shrimp feeding fish, right? It's gonna have it, right? I'm gonna put a little rattle in there because shrimp click, right? And at this time of year, the shrimp are laden with eggs, so they're full of protein. So the bass get very focused on them. We were on a certain spot in Dungarvan the other night, and I saw this head come out of the water and just scooped through the weed, like it was like it went sideways. And I thought, oh my God, that's a huge fish. And you know, I get ridiculously overexcited. And I thought, no, maybe it's not that big. And Stevie was on the rock because he's like, you know, he's like Bear Grylls compared to me, right? So he was like on the rock 200 yards away. The next thing he lets a roar down at me, I've just seen a double. So I was like, okay, yeah, it was as big as I thought it was. But they were feeding on shrimp. Okay, here's another lure that I really like for the small stuff. And this is the 3-inch Dew Live stick. Again, that's in shrimp color, right? Again, I'm going to put a rattle in there. I'm going to use a very fine drill bit. You know, I had some guy say to me, oh, why do you use, you know, just stick it in there? No, sorry, no, absolutely not, because it will change the shape of the lure. The guy who made this lure thought very deeply about it and the profile and the shape and how it fishes and how it swims, and I do not want to alter that, right? I want to keep that as good as I can, right? At the end of the day, you can have the fanciest rod and reel in the world, and if you're not throwing, it's what you put in front of them that matters. It's like salmon fishing, right? You see guys with loop this, loop that, loop the other, and then you get a chap comes along with a Gray's 13-foot and rolls a beautiful fly with a nice leader and absolutely horses a big fish out of it. It's not the rod, it's what's on the end of the line that counts, okay? Then we've got our classics, right? You know, okay, so the 6-inch Dew Live stick, I fish it in a range of colors. right? I fish some natural colours. I fish mostly natural colours, but I also have some kind of really not natural colours, right? Because sometimes just that change of colour or whatever, it's something that'll just kind of annoy them or whatever. We'll just get you a strike from fish that otherwise not particularly bloody interested, right? What else have we got here in my bag of tricks? Oh yeah, love these, right? These are from Kitech, right? Another awesome company. They do a shad version, a paddle tail version, but personally, I love this guy. Okay, you can see why when the sand eel are in the estuary, okay, on a 5 gram or a 7 gram batchy head, and you trot that down along, right? The bass are just gonna wallop it. I love that form of fishing. You know, you just tick, 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 and it's the take. It's like, and you, oh, and in and off we go, right? Make sure you got your drag set tight enough to set the hook, but not so tight that a fish can't take some line. Because if you get a big fish, which is always possible in an estuary, he'll just bust you off, and you'll have to go home and have a good old think about that. And I know that there's no worse feeling in the world than the feeling of, oh my god, I lost a double figure fish and it was my fault, right? I also fish a lot of top water in the estuary, but we'll deal with that another day, okay? And then last but not least on the list, this pack of lures is 20 years old, right? You can still get them though. The Hazdong Magnum, right? I fish these on owner offset hooks, right? And I swim them. The twist locks. I mean, you just can't go wrong, right? Look at that. I mean, any type of goby, smelt, all the other stuff, seed mullet, all the other things that bass love to feed on. That's it, isn't it? Right? If I was a bass, I'd grab that, wouldn't you? It's just lovely, and it's got lovely action. I mean, mega bass are, you know, they're one of the best lure companies in the world, right? And the Japanese are streaks ahead of us, right? You know. So that's the kind of size. That's the kind of stuff I'm doing. How I'm fishing, well, it changes, right? I love my low water fishing, right? Because those big fish, a lot of them don't come out. They'll move down the estuary, right? And they'll sit in holes and stuff. Your job is to go and find those holes, right? If you pay me to guide you, my job is to show you where those holes are. You know, the website will be live soon, and I'll have some testimonials up there from Richard Cake and some other accomplished anglers about what it's like to fish with me for a day, and some of the fish they've caught, right? I mean, we were fishing in estuary, and we had not had a take all day, and I said, come on, we'll go and try this one hole. And sure enough, we got there, and there were 4 or 5 cormorants lined up, and they were just feeding, and I knew, I said, oh yeah, the fish are in the hole. And we had fish after fish after fish, and Richard snuck off to the right, as he does. He's a match angler, so he's a patient guy, and he just stood there, and he had a HTO, you know, the HTO paddle tail. It's a copy of the Sayori shad from Exorus. And he just stood there with that, very slowly dragging it along the bottom, and next thing the rod just went solid, and he said, oh, I've hooked the bottom, and he went, oh no, it's a bloody fish, and the thing just and it was 11 pounds something eventually when we got ashore. The picture will be on the website with a rather smiley looking Englishman who was, and rightly so, very happy with himself. Finally, I fished some metals in the estuary, Now, this is the latest from Weston, right? Now, I like Weston as a company. I've been giving them a little bit of a hard time the last couple of days because their boxes, no, the clips are really not happening. The Sandy Andy weedless is coming back bent over. I mean, when it fishes, it's a great lure. It's catching sea trout. I mean, if a lure can catch sea trout, it's a good bloody lure, right? But this they put some thinking into, right? This top assist hook here, right? How I came up with that was I was fishing the river at home. So one autumn, what happened was the ferry in Passage, the gannets were just slamming the far side, and like people were like, "Oh, the fish are there," right? And they're not usually there. So I went over and I was fishing the dropping tide, and you could actually see the fish coming at you down the channel, right, smashing bait. And I thought, well, no, I'll stick to the bottom because there might be a big one down there. And I was fishing Savage Gear Seeker in white and casting it up the current, dropping down, letting it run, giving it the odd pull so it would come up and flutter back down. And I kept getting bang, and I'd strike and nothing. Bang, I'd strike nothing, right? So I went home and I thought about it and I said, what the hell is going on? So I put a little assist hook on the top of my lure. I went back the next day. The very first touch I got, I hit and boom, fish on. And sure enough, he was hooked on that top assist hook. So Weston, fair play to them. They've put some thinking into this lure. It's available in a lovely range of weights and a lovely range of colours. I love pink, love it, absolutely adore it. Um, I was fishing, this one is 16 grams. I mean, just ideal for the light rod, right? It goes a country mile. So when you get those fish that are feeding far out in an estuary, you're going to be able to reach them, right? Um, what was I going to say there? I don't know, it's totally gone out of my head. It doesn't matter. Um, don't underrate metals. Metals are really, really good. And don't just fish them like, oh, cast and retrieve, right? Rattle them along the bottom, right? Fish will hit them. You know what I mean? They're like tumbling and tumbling and banging and blah, 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 right? And you can feel your rod tip thumping. You know the lure is working, right? And the bites will be hard bites usually. I also love them in current. I mean, in current, it's just hard to beat, right? Everybody knows about that bar at the end of Tremor Beach. You know, some fantastic fish get taken out of there. We've got to be careful because we've got some other odious people who shoot nets across the front of it. So, Ireland, Fisheries Ireland, could pay a bit more attention to that, please. It would be appreciated. Um, because it doesn't take much to wipe out a stock of sea bass, right? We saw that in the 80s. There were basically no bass left in Ireland, right? And our bass, unlike the English bass, are all shallow water fish, right? So there's an advantage to that in that it means you've got a chance of catching a 12 or 13 pound fish from the shore, right? Whereas the English guys like Spirit of a Run and I mean fantastic anglers, and I mean I must actually go for a day on that boat. Maybe give Andy Davis or someone a shout and go down there with them and fish for a day. But we don't have that. All our fish stay inshore. The really big fish are in our big estuaries, which I'm going to explore a lot this year. Um, but it makes them incredibly vulnerable. So if a gill netter gets in at night and sets a net, he can wipe out a stock of fish without any real trouble, and take 40 boxes of bass. I mean, I was on a beach in West Waterford the other night, and I had 10 fish over 65 centimeters. I had 10 fish between 60 and 65 centimeters, so I had 20 fish. Um, that's an awesome night's fishing, right? But can you imagine half a mile of gill net, what it would do? gone. And those are heavy spawning fish, right? Those are, you know, we need those fish, right? Those fish are worth more money put back in the water. Yeah. So obviously passionate about that, and spear fishermen as well. You know, what Jesus Christ, why would you want to do that? Anyway, enough said. We won't go into it. So we'll end on a positive note. So that's just a little bit more on estuary fishing. It's my favorite type of fishing. If you come fishing with me, it's probably what you're going to end up doing, unless you want to do something different. I will do whatever you want to do. Obviously, you're the boss. I'm just a guide. I'm not going to fish, right? I'm going to stand beside you. I'm going to go through your tackle box, make sure you've got what you need. If you don't have it, I'll have it with me. I'm going to talk you through some watercraft, and we're going to do all of that stuff. We're going to talk about wind direction, wind speed, pressure, all of those things that make a difference to how fish feed, and generally have a bit of fun too, because it's meant to be fun, right? Today certainly is going to be a lot of fun. So hope people find that helpful, and thanks again for the really positive response to the channel. Give me a follow, subscribe or whatever, share it with your buddies. Bass Lodge will be open in September for accommodation, and the website should be live soon. I just need to do a couple more Zoom calls with my computer guy, who happens to be my buddy. We screen share, and he helps me to build things, and it turned out to be more complicated than I thought, so it's just taking a little bit longer than expected. Quick thanks to Henry Gilby for supplying me with some awesome pictures from the past. Just the nostalgia alone of them, it was worth it. But they are really beautiful pictures of fish and stuff, so I'm very grateful. So have a great day, everybody. Get out to the estuary, get your glasses on, stay nice and quiet. Get there at 3 hours off the low water. Let the last of the water go out, and remember that what you think are mullet may not be. They could well be bass, or if they are mullet, there may well be bass with them. So have a fish at them. So tight lines, everyone, and we will talk soon.